am Erika.
And I'm Sean.
And we are the Blanchards. This podcast is created to be a safe place where we discuss topics regarding faith, love, family, marriage,
and everything in between through the perspective of an interracial blended couple focused on ministry
and mental health. No topic is off limits. We're about to have adult conversation through the eyes of a Latina scholar, life coach, mother, and wife.
Along with the perspective of a Black king, engineer, entrepreneur, father, and husband. We're about to take brown and Black excellence to a whole new level.
Family Unlocked starts now.
Howdy, howdy, howdy.
Hey, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Family Unlock. I am Erika.
And I'm Sean.
And we are here today for another episode on the subject. Well, not another episode because this will be the first subject on it, but it's another episode. And the subject is...
Go ahead.
Communication.
Communication, the dreaded subject.
Oh my gosh.
I can't wait. This is going to be a special one, you guys.
Is it? You know what I was thinking? We should start this. Let's look it up.
Look up the definition of communication?
Yeah, I lost my phone.
That's the Lord. He's like, nope, not today.
Aha, I found it. Oh, right. So if anybody notices that my voice sounds different from the past couple weeks, it's because I was getting sick. We didn't know I was getting sick. And then I got really sick. And so my voice was being weird. So this is me, guys, and I'm healthy.
Okay, do you want to read it or I have it up?
I want you to read the universal definition of communication, and then I'm going to look up the psychological.
So universal,
definition.
You mean like Webster's dictionary? Universal.
This is a perfect example of communication. Yes, universal means the broad definition.
Okay, I got it. So according to Webster's dictionary, it says that it's a process. Communication is a process by which information is exchanged between individuals through a common system of symbols, signs, or behavior. And that's essentially what it has. It has different examples, but that's essentially what it is.
Okay. I would like you to repeat that again.
Okay. So once again, it says communication is a process by which information is exchanged between individuals through a common system of symbols, signs, or behaviors.
Okay, that's interesting, right? Symbols, signs, and behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, how I interpret that is not necessarily words, but you can communicate through a person's gestures, right? Their behavior, how they're acting. That's how I would define behavior. Symbols, how, just the vibe when you get in the room, like, right? Or, okay, right? Either one. And signs. So if somebody is, I don't know, what's coming to me is like when you're cleaning and you're like slamming things, then you know somebody is upset.
Yeah.
So when I read that, it doesn't necessarily say verbiage.
Yes.
Right? Which is like dialogue, discussions, right?
There's another part. It mentions it, but like I said, this is just additional.
Interesting. This is a wonderful example. Okay, so there's more.
There is
for
more.
some reason you left that out.
Yeah, there is more. I apologize for that. So
pray for me.
Yeah, it says, okay, so this is part 2. I'll read all of them. It's part 2. So
I think that would be wonderful if you read the whole definition.
It says part 2 is information communicated, information transmitted or conveyed. And then it mentions a verbal or written message as an example. Then it says communication in terms of plural is a system as of telephones or computers for transmitting or exchanging information. Part B of this is a system of routes for moving troops, supplies, and vehicles. And part C of that is also personnel engaged in communicating, personnel engaged in transmitting or exchanging information. And there's a 4, 5, and 6 of it, but some of them deals with anatomy. Another one deals with plural in construction. So I don't know if that necessarily pertains to what we're talking about today.
I mean, I don't think it matters. I think just saying the definition.
Yeah. Okay. And so for the plural one, it says
anatomically, what does it mean when you're speaking of anatomy?
I don't know.
You took it off?
Yeah. No, it's still on, but I don't know. I'm not understanding.
I thought you said there was a different definition for anatomy.
For anatomy? No. Oh, no. Yes. I see what you're saying. I'm getting confused. This is the thing. This is
Wonderful.
Our communication.
This is really good.
So it says for In terms of construction, it says a technique for expressing ideas effectively as in speech. B, the technology of the transmission of information as by print or telecommunication.
Okay.
5 is an act or instances of transmitting. In terms of the anatomy, it says a connection between bodily parts. And then that's
my favorite form of communication.
Yeah, that's the last definition. So that long roundabout.
Okay, the long-winded response. However, it was necessary because what we get out of that universal definition, meaning typically that's what people see and define. It said communication was through signals, signs, body language, right? There was something else about
symbol, signs, behavior.
And then there's another one about like troops or something. Okay, so we all get it, right? We get it. So you just read it. You don't remember what you read.
No.
Okay. And so the psychology of communication, it says, communication is an interpersonal interaction in which individuals exchange emotionally meaningful messages. A significant part of communication is carried out more for the sake of exchanging emotions than for the sake of transmitting information. Wow. So that's quite different, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Another definition that they have in the communication skills in psychology is attention, active listening, empathy, and communication, time allocated, are the main elements in achieving effective communication and in establishing a relationship based on trust with the client. So that's how you effectively communicate, right? That's a tool, really, what they're saying. That's a technique. You have active listening, you have empathetic listening, you're attentive, your body language is open, you're showing the client that you are not judgmental, that you're a safe place, you're not harmful, you're there to help, you're there to support. So it's all about body language, and it's all about what we would say, like your vibe, right? Your energy. It's funny, as I would assume, right? Being in a relationship, that when it's time to communicate, we're not always communicating in a way that we're like, let's sit down and talk. Typically, when we're discussing our feelings and how frustrated we are or whatever emotion we're feeling at that time, it's usually in a state of, okay, we're here now. This is what's going on.
Yeah.
We're going to talk, right? It's not usually planned. So that would be really challenging for some to be able to say, like, I'm trying to effectively communicate with my partner. And then when struggles come, it becomes a debate or a debacle or an argument, right? So I thought this was a good topic to discuss because lately you and I have been kind of, I don't want to say at each other's throats because that's not necessarily, I think, true. But I think like we're realizing like, oh my God, we communicate so differently, right? And we got down to where I was like, oh my God, I see what the issue is. My goodness. It was, I communicate in such a like specific way that I'm really like trying to understand things, and Sean will just go like a rule follower. He like, for example, if a credit card distributor or like a bank calls us, like we'll say, I don't know, like Bank of America calls us and says, hey, you have suspicious activity on this card. Would you like to close it? Sean would be like, close it.
Yeah.
Do it now. Hurry up. Right. And I wouldn't be. I would be like, who's this? And how do you know my credit card information? And do you really work for Bank of America? Right. And so I would ensure that I'm checking. I'm looking at my bank statement. I'm looking up who it was. Maybe I made the charge. Maybe something else happened. Maybe it was an automatic removal or withdrawal that I forgot that I put, the bill to be automatically something. I'm going to investigate it before I make any sudden moves. So for some people would think I was like a rule breaker, right? Because I'm trying to figure out what's happening. I'm not taking it for face value, right? And in the same instance, like I can do the same thing with something that's not as risky. So, well, in that context, right? Like, your finances. We were actually using the example of if his mom was to say, Sean, don't touch this, it's red. You see how it's red? That means it's hot, the stove. Sean be like, I'm on it, mama. I will never touch that stove.
Mm-hmm.
You got it. And I'm like hella hot or like a little hot?
Yeah.
Like how hot is it? And so if it's orange, if it's a little bit red, what if it's pink? Does that still mean it's hot?
Yes.
And I would want to feel it. And I would want to understand why it's pink and red. And so anyway, so those two different communication ways of communicating can be really detrimental to a relationship, right? And then it becomes a communication issue. And then you're fighting on, well, maybe not fighting, because some people don't like to say they fight, or they don't like to say that they argue, and they don't like to admit to certain things, but we're only human.
Intense fellowship.
There's intense fellowship. There's miscommunication.
Yeah.
But there's a level of frustration, right? Like now who becomes the communicator? Who's the one that knows how to communicate more effectively?
Yeah.
Because sometimes we don't have time for you to research, Erika. It's like sometimes you just got to pull the trigger, homegirl.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because when those are the times that we have to like make a choice and it has to be right now, Sean freezes.
Yeah.
And I'm like, let's do it. Shut it off. Do it. Whatever.
And when she says freezes, it's more like I get stuck in my head. So I'm thinking like,
then
okay,
he starts overthinking in those instances. But anything else, it's like the opposite. So we're on the other, what is it? The pendulum, right? We're on one side of it.
Yeah.
He's like over here in this situation and I'm down over here. He's up here, I'm down here. And then another, situation where we have to be, here's a choice, whatever. It's like, I step in. So it seems like we're just always on opposite sides. So how do we effectively communicate? That's really the topic.
Yeah, we're asking the audience. No, I'm just
Tell us.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, I think that because you and I are not afraid to have this conversation, we get into arguments, we get into like, no, that's not right, and vice versa. Like it could be sometimes it's Erika, calm down. It's not that deep. Do X, Y, and Z and we'll be fine. And sometimes I have to be like, he's right. I can't make this. I'm making it bigger than it has to be.
Mm-hmm. But that's not always the case. You know what I mean? So it's not like, she's saying this or doing something. Obviously, there's a form of miscommunication. In this context, we would say certain stuff and I would be like, dude, I know how to communicate quite effectively. Now, over time, I've realized that that's not the case. And at least when it comes to communication with my wife, I realized like, oh yeah, there's definitely some areas that I can work on when it comes to communication, because especially when things keep happening and they keep repeating, you realize like, okay, no, this isn't just happenstance. There's a breakdown in communication here. And it's not necessarily, oh, it's not me, it's her. I'm realizing that these things that she's bringing up are things that keep repeating. So I have to take a step back and look at it. And sometimes we're successful at it. And sometimes we go around this merry-go-round again, and we keep doing it. So it's trying to learn to effectively communicate with your partner, just to be effective with it, and to be able to not, at least for me, I tend to hold things in, right? And I tend to, I'm not really a confrontational person. So I'm just like, okay, well, sure. But that's not healthy either, because now what it feels like is that she's just steamrolling me when that's not what she's trying to do. She's trying to communicate and trying to say, okay, this is how I feel. Don't shut down. Mm-hmm. Don't just be like, okay, well, yeah, sure, whatever you want, because that's not healthy. So it's learning those forms and being able to do it. My default naturally is to be introverted, and it doesn't mean that you're necessarily afraid or, oh my God, she's going to beat me or something like that. But it means that I'm just like, I don't want no problems. And you just like, okay, yeah, sure, whatever you want. But that's not effective, because my wife has done this several times in the past, is that she'll communicate and she'll tell me something. I'm like, yeah, okay. And then come back and then she'll be like, well, didn't we just have a discussion? I'm like, I think so. And then that's where the frustration comes, because she's like, oh, so now you're just not listening. Not only on top of the fact that you're not communicating with me in terms of like, verbally communicating with me, but now I feel like you're just not listening to me. So that's adding more fuel to the fire. You know what I mean? And so it's learning how to navigate this communication field with my wife, and how to do it comfortably, and how to do it like, Erika's very bold and upfront and straightforward when she communicates. You know, no F's given, she'll communicate, right? With me, I'm not like that. You know, I'm more like, okay, well, let me think about what I'm saying. Let me do this, let me do that. And I have to be able to communicate in an effective manner that I can get my point across. I can also be respectful, but then I also, as long as I'm standing 10 toes down on what I'm saying and what I'm believing, I have to do that. And I realize I struggle with that. But that's just one of the things that you start to get exposed to when you have a person who you love and care about and you want to put that time in to communicate. So,
and it's funny because as I'm hearing what you're saying, I'm thinking, okay, I'm taking notes because it's mental notes, because that's my job, right? We listen to people talk and I have to take mental notes and I write down notes on what they said. And so that I can come back to it. So in my head, I'm thinking when you said, I'm not confrontational. So I'm like, well, neither am I. Because in my eyes, I'm not being confrontational, but I will challenge something you're saying so I can have a better understanding of what you want. Because my ultimate goal, and we've had this discussion multiple times, is for you to tell me what your needs are and for me to try to meet those needs. And how do you communicate? Or do you like this or do you not like this? Because for me, I think that for a man, well, for my man, for him to make the change and effectively do the things I'm asking him to do, he has to have an emotional connection to it. And if he's not listening, then he's not taking note. It's not going to be completed, right? And so the next one was that I like to say that I'm brave in how I say things. I don't really care about, I don't take things too personally. It doesn't frustrate me. But if I'm thinking about something and I'm trying to process something happening and you're like interrupting that just so that you can get your point across, or you're like, well, tell me, Erika, tell me, Erika, tell me, Erika. And I'm like, I don't even know. At this point, I forgot what I was thinking about because I'm too busy listening to the outside noise, right? It becomes overwhelming for me and then I will shut down, right? At that point, we're trying to shut down. But for me, I'm always trying to understand, because I never want to say, oh, that's what you said. I steamroll, you know? And I'm like, no, I don't. I try to pull it in my mind. You may feel like that. I'm not trying to take away your feelings. What I'm saying is I try to pull it out of you. What do you want? What do you need? Like, do you like this? Do you not like this? Right? Because, for example, if I make a big pot of pozole, right? I know you love pozole, but you may not want pozole. So I say, hey, you feel like pozole, but you're not even paying attention to me. And you're like, yeah. So I make this big old pot of pozole and now it's not getting eaten. And I'm like, my energy, my time, I could have been doing something else. I could have made something else you were going to eat. Do you see what I'm saying? And for you, it was like, it's not a big deal. It's a pot of pozole. You want me to eat it? I'll eat it. And I'm like, you don't get it. And you're like, no, I don't. What is the problem? So what I'm saying is, you know, in that, where I'm in that state, I'm going to give like this open opportunity for you and other men, if they have a wife that communicates the same way, thinks the same way, or a husband that thinks the same way. It's like, it's not about the pozole. It was about my time and my energy and trying to give you something that not just was going to provide nutrients, but it was going to satisfy something you wanted. And then hopefully you can eat it tomorrow for lunch and I don't have to make lunch.
Yeah.
So if I can kill 2 birds with 1 stone, even 3, I'll even try to hit 3. Because in Erika's world, if I can hit 50 with 1 stone, that would be wonderful. But in that moment, I'm thinking, if I can do this because I'm basing my choice on your feedback and it's not coming back in a meaningful manner, then I just wasted both of our times. And now I'm frustrated because I feel like I'm running in circles because I'm not just thinking about what you need to eat, but everybody else in the house. And so if everybody will eat the pot of pozole, then wonderful. Does that make sense?
No, I get it. I think it makes sense. I just wanted to touch base on something that you said briefly when you were like, you know, sometimes when you communicate, it feels like you're trying to pull things out. Sometimes in those forms of communications, I don't even know what I'm thinking. I'm trying to process it. I'm trying to think it up, you know, process these emotions and process how you feel. And sometimes I don't know how I'm feeling in that moment. And it could just be me, you know, that loop of buffering that's happening in my head as me trying to figure out, okay, well, what is it? Because my thing is, I do this a lot. I don't want to say what sounds good. You know what I mean? Oh, okay, if I say this, then she'll be happy. Sometimes I'm actually trying to process, trying to figure out, you know, how am I feeling at that moment? And sometimes I don't know. And so I think that's when you're like, well, what do you mean you don't know? Sometimes I don't necessarily know. I think you're trying to get me to get to that point. Let me say that. You're trying to get me to get to that point, meaning that if you don't know, then say you don't know. And then we can start from there.
Thank you.
Right.
Yes.
We can start from there.
Yeah. Because now you're able to say, actually, I don't know. I'm processing everything you're saying. And because before it would be like, yeah, whatever you want.
Yeah.
Just so that the conversation could stop. Not intentionally, like, just stop. I want you to shut up. But more like, okay, I'm overstimulated. So please hold on. Right. Yeah. But now you can say, wait, babe, I don't know. There's a lot of different, thoughts coming through my head. And I'd be like, okay, let me slow down. Let me move back.
But I have to say that in a way that's effective. And sometimes.
Right. But that's what I'm saying. We've worked to this point.
We worked to that point.
Before it was like, whatever you want.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's what I want. And you don't even know what I said.
No. Or I just wouldn't say anything. I'm just quiet. Like, because don't know what to say. And I have to realize, this goes back to the communication within me. I have to realize that, if I don't know at that moment, then I don't know. Right. And that has to be enough at that moment. It doesn't have to be like, well, no, of course you know. Of course you understand what I genuinely don't know. And that's where I'm at. It's not that I'm trying to divert the conversation or be like, let me push it away. I don't know what I'm feeling. I don't know what I'm thinking about. To be honest with you, especially when you get put on the spot about like in a conversation, most guys tend to be like, I don't know what you want me to say. Right. And so, and that's just because we don't necessarily deal with that emotional aspect of it. And so I'm trying to learn, at least to go back to you and I'm trying to learn how to express how I'm feeling at that particular moment. Because a lot of times I'm just like, I don't know how I'm feeling. I know that my actions is making you feel this way. And I'm responding to your response to something that I've done or said or things like that. But I'm not tapping into how I feel at that moment.
That's a good.
So I think that's something that can be a struggle with most men, because we don't tap into our feelings unless our feelings are emotion, our feelings are anger, or I won't even necessarily say happiness, but it's like, we're not angry. So,
like you're neutral.
You're
like
neutral,
you're
right?
Chill,
yeah.
Right?
So, and then that's the extent. But in terms of like an emotion, like, oh, well, how are you feeling? I don't know. I mean, okay. Like we watched that video, like that you showed me today of, obviously the guy was going through some stuff. He bawling and, tears are in his face, but he's like, I'm fine. I'm good. I'm fine. And it's, of course it's not true.
Yeah.
But that to me sums up what most men tend to deal with when it comes to certain things that they're dealing with internally. It's very hard to communicate that. And the reason why it's hard to communicate it is not necessarily because they don't trust you. It's because they don't even know how to process it themselves. You are kind of taught to stifle these emotions. And you get to a point where you're now in a position where
welcoming.
they're welcoming. And you're like, okay, emotions. I need you to tell me how you feel. You're like, okay, I don't know how to do that.
Articulate it.
Yeah. I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to communicate that.
I don't even know what this feeling
I don't know.
is, right?
I don't know what it is. So when you say something like that, it's kind of like, okay. But my barometer of that is the kids, to be like, okay, this one he's spazzing out. He just had a tantrum. Okay. So how can I communicate or get him to communicate effectively to say, this is what I'm feeling at this moment. I'm upset or I'm frustrated at this moment because of X, Y, and Z. Got you. I understand that. Now we can talk about, why are you screaming at the top of your lungs when you're not physically hurt? You may be frustrated with something, which I can understand, but there's no pain. So let's address that. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, it reminds me of the jiu-jitsu thing. So my kids are in jiu-jitsu and Sean coaches when they need help. And so he told me, he was like, oh, I had to get on the boys. And I was like, why? What happened? And he goes, well, they started to argue and fight. And so when I got in the car, I told him, you need to knock that off and da-da-da-da-da, right? Well, you tell him what you said.
Well, this is the interesting part. They're brothers.
Just tell them what you said.
They're brothers, so they tend to kind of squabble, bicker. Yeah, twins are, back and forth, especially when they're sparring with each other, right? We do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, so they're sparring with each other. But when it comes to them sparring with other people, that's not even an issue, right? They're welcoming to do that. So when we got into the car, I said, hey, you guys need to knock that off. Like when it comes to that, you need to stop doing that. If you can't stop doing that, and I mentioned because you guys are higher belts and you're about to become a gray belt, there's a level of responsibility that comes with that. So you need to be leaders. You need to be able to do that. But if you don't do that and you can't do that, then you're going to spend time doing push-ups and doing sit-ups until you can, learn how to work together with each other. Right. And that's kind of how we started off. And then.
So when Sean came home and he told me what happened, I mean, he was pretty frustrated when he got home. And he was like, I was so upset. And I think we're up here, right, talking about it, because we try not to have these kind of conversations in front of the kids, even if Erika, Jesse, or my grandma, because we take care of my grandma. And she has her own room downstairs. So we came into our room and he's telling me what happened. And I said, okay. And he's looking at me and he's like, what? Like my face, right? And I'm like, well, I mean, do they know? Did you give them examples of what they did? And did you tell them, like, did you give them tools on how to effectively communicate? Do you know why they're not communicating, correctly and why they're fighting? Did you explain to, and he goes, no, I didn't.
Didn't do any of that. Just told him what it is.
And he's just looking at me like, go ahead, Erika, tell me something else I did wrong. Because clearly I can't even talk to my kids right. And I'm like, no, I'm not trying to frustrate you. I'm just, okay, this is not the first time, right? You've told me that they've gotten into the best way they described it was they bicker. They tend to bicker. So I told Sean, well, remember, they're together all the time. So I said, well, we should, teach him what this is and teach him what that is. And he's just looking at me like, do it then.
Yeah.
And so we went downstairs and they were eating lunch and I asked them how their jiu-jitsu practice went. And they said, it was good. It was great. And Sean's looking at them like, you liars. And so I asked them, I said, well, I heard that you guys got into a bit of an argument. And so was it Johnny? Was the one that said, yeah, we just get on each other's nerves. And I said, okay, but it's happening a lot more. And so we discussed what communication tools are. We explained when somebody is leading I don't know what they're called, leading the wrestling. I don't know. They're, one's always on top.
Yeah,
that means
grappling.
they're leading when they're grappling, right?
Yeah.
There's one on top. That means he's dominant, right?
Yeah,
he's
mount
the one
position.
that's supposed to be learning at that point, right? And so then when the person's on top, I told Johnny that one on the bottom, which is typically Johnny, he has to follow the lead. And then when he's on top, he follows the lead because in that specific time, it's not about who's winning. It's about who's learning, right? Who's getting the experience to move to the next step. And so they were like, oh, I mean, I'm sure you guys explain it to them, but they're brothers. So they only hear like on guard. You know what is going down, brother, right? So, and then I reminded them, okay, because what they're really trying to do, it's not just about following the directions. It's about keeping you safe. Because at one point you can do something and you can really hurt yourself or you can hurt the other person because you're too busy on trying to see who wins and who's more stronger than the other, especially twins, right? Especially brothers. So then we started talking about leadership. And I said, well, what does it mean to be a leader? Are you guys a leader or a follower? They said they were leaders. And I said, what does it mean to be a leader? And they said, well, we make our own choices. We make sure people are safe and we make sure that we're making the right choice. And I said, exactly. So when you're on top and you're trying to kick your brother to hold him down and the other one's trying to get out, because sometimes the one on top is supposed to just hold them down enough for them to get out, right? They're trying to learn how to get out of a submission or whatever. And so if you're not doing that, you can hurt your brother. And that's not the goal. The goal is how to have the techniques on how to effectively get out of a situation or subdue a person, right? So we went into that. We talked about leadership. We talked about teams and we talked about communication. And that in that moment, even if it's for an hour, whatever you're dealing with is out the door because your job at that moment is to be a listener, a leader, and a team member. And so that's how we try to make sure that we're communicating effectively. And I mean, that goes for us too. Sometimes you just have to let me win.
Okay. That tends to be, but no, to touch base on that.
No. Yeah, I know what you're going to say.
Yeah.
That's true. He seems to just allow me to win the discussion. Right? So I win the battle, but I don't win the war because at the end of the day, you're still doing what you were doing that I told you to stop doing. And then we're back at square one.
Yeah.
So who wins? You.
No.
Yeah.
It's no win. We're not at war. There's no battlefield.
Right.
There's none of that. We're learning how to traverse this terrain of communication and how to do it effectively and how to do it in a way that we feel safe that we can communicate with each other. Right?
And not everybody's going to communicate the same way, but we're trying to implement here in this subject matter is that it has to be a discussion, right? Sometimes we have to write things down so we can come back to it. And sometimes that's just so exhausting. It wasn't until recently that Sean noticed that I come home, and the minute I come home,
not even a minute, as soon as you step your foot
off the car,
on the soil, then you have...
They know. And it's not just the kids, even Eric and Jesse and my grandma. And it's like, Gianni's like, mommy, give me all your love. Give it to me now. And he was like, where you been? Huh? It's 5:30. You said you got off at 5. And I'm like, well, you don't have to drive here. And he's like, and was there traffic?
Yeah.
And then my grandma's like, shame on you. Is that what you wore to work? Jesus Christ. It's like the moment you see her, it's a disappointment. She looks at me and she's like, you've always bothered me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Jesus Christ.
That's what she's hilarious.
And I ask her like, okay, do you need some coffee? Do you need some water? Do you need some tequila? What do you need? Whatever you need, lady, I'll give it to you. And then Eric's like, Mom, can I get this? Mom, can I borrow this? Mom. And then Jesse's like, Mom. And Jesse's like, Johnny, give me love.
Yeah.
Give me love. Wherever he can, he'll just sit next to me still. Remember he used to sleep with us? Yeah.
So, I mean, just to get at least, and I go back to, I feel like, sometimes we're faith-based people. We live in, our faith. And I feel like God in that moment is allowing me to see things through, her eyes. Because as soon as the example was when we came home from going grocery shopping, right? So it's not like it was.
So yesterday.
Yeah, it was a thrilling thing. So we went grocery shopping.
We had like a day date. By the grace of God. It's like we prayed. We said, Eric and Jesse decided to leave. We have no babysitters. And typically we need babysitters because the kids are still little. And my grandma, she has dementia. So we have to make sure she has someone. We just feel better when someone's here with her all the time. And so we're like, okay, I guess we're not going to go grocery shopping because she woke up early. She typically wakes. And Eric and Jesse decided to leave early. They were going to stay, but they decided to leave early. So by the grace of God, my uncle knocked on the door. And we pulled him in like,
yeah,
you ain't go nowhere, sucker. And he's like, go. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So we were able to kind of go and do that, but we still, it's not like we had the whole day to do whatever we need to do. It was, we ate quickly, essentially.
We went to Costco.
Yeah, we went to Costco. So we did grocery shopping. We ate, we ran some errands, and then we went straight home. So as soon as she walked in the door, Gianni was like, I'm hungry. Now, for some reason, that infuriated me because I've actually had a conversation with him about it. It's like, what you mean to tell me with all the snacks and stuff that's in here? He's like, I'm starving. Like, are you starving? Really? There's plenty of food for you to eat. So I had to afterwards. And, I'm seeing Erika's face and she's just like, feel like she just was drained just as soon as, because it's like as soon as her foot hit the ground, somebody was asking
Mind
for
you,
something.
we're holding bags.
Yeah, and we're bringing everything in. So I'm like, before you ask for something, why don't you get up and help?
And I think I haven't been sleeping well because I have a lot of papers due. It's the end of the semester.
Yeah.
But I didn't go to sleep till like 2 again.
Yeah,
right?
So
and then we woke up early for the gym. And then we were just running errands. Mm-hmm. And so with my grandma's dementia, she'll get very manic. It's called sundowning. And so she'll be awake all night and she'll get delusional because, people need sleep. And so she's not at that point yet, but we can see it's starting to come and you never know when it's coming. So it's just all of a sudden she's experiencing some delusions. And that morning she was up and where you been? And what do we do? And I want to, and it's just boom, 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 boom. And we have to be able to manage that unmanageable impulsive behavior. Mm-hmm. And so we've been dealing with that for about 2 days straight. And so, mind you, we're up, we're going to the gym, we're working out, and then we have to hurry up back home so they can go to jiu-jitsu. And I'm trying to deal with my grandma while they're at jiu-jitsu, try to handle everything that Sean tries to help during the weekend because he's home, he can help. So I'm dealing with that. And then we finally get to go out, and we're not really going out to have fun. We're going to go run errands, but still for us, it's like,
just a moment without the kids, So, I mean, I think.
So then we walk in.
Yeah, we walk in, we have groceries in hand, people start asking stuff. And so I had to pull.
But they had 8 right before we left. I think that was what we were like, what the? My uncle brought food.
Yes, they ate before.
Mm-hmm. And they had a good meal. They had lunch. We left, or whatever. They had a meal before we took off. So when we come in, we're just like, are you serious? Even my grandma saw, she's looking at me, she's rubbing her stomach like, woman, you didn't know that I'm hungry?
Yeah. And so, I mean, and that's kind of the dynamic. So, I pulled the kids aside and I told them, I was like, if you're that, and they're old enough to, get into the pantry and do the things that they need to do. They're very self-sufficient when they want to be. But then there's times that they just don't want to do anything. And they're like, no, you do it. But this is one of the times where it's like, hey, if we come home, that should not be the first thing that you're asking for. If you're hungry, if you're that hungry and you feel that way, get a healthy snack. There's yogurt in there. There's fruit in there. There's things that you can eat. You're more than capable of getting you something to eat that can hold you over until we get home. And then when we start to cook and we tell you, okay, we're going to make you something to eat, or we ask you, are you hungry? We can make you something to eat. Then you can express that. But don't do that as soon as we come in. So I made the connection with them is like, do you know how you felt when I think you had told them they had just came back from jiu-jitsu and you said, hey, you need to clean your room. It's like, hey, can you go clean your room? And they were just like, oh my God.
This is a day of rest.
Yeah, this is like, what do you mean? And it's like the same feeling you had when you said that is the same feeling we had when we walked in and you're asking us to do stuff. And then on top of that, we had to put up the tree, the second tree, right?
Yeah. And so we made them something to eat. And then I'm like, okay, I'm going to go sit down. And the minute I sit down, right? My grandma ate, everybody ate. We're like, okay, fine. We're putting the groceries away. And it's like Costco run. So it's not like just groceries it's like groceries in the other refrigerator, groceries we have to put in our shelf in the garage. Like it's a lot, right? So finally everybody's calm. We come to the bed, we just sit down, and Gianni's like, so what about my Christmas tree?
Yeah.
And I was like,
and you're like, one more task. This is something else I gotta do.
And Sean was like, no, tomorrow. We'll do it tomorrow. And I go, no, babe, I've been promising him, because we have 3 different Christmas trees. One is the family room one is the girl room, because I have my own little living room. And then they have their, I like to call it the Charlie Brown.
Yeah, this Charlie.
Now this theirs. Like
this is a new
Marvel
tradition for this tree, just because they didn't do this before. So now we're giving them, because they want their own individuality and do that, right?
Well, we had 2, but
yeah,
I wanted a new Christmas tree, so we gave them the older one. So because they wanted to make mine ugly, so I was like, no, that doesn't go on there. Anyway, so so it's about, what time is it? It's about 7:00. And I'm like, I'm just going to go to Target and take them. And he's like, what? Yeah. No. And so that's how we ended up going to bed at 2:00 again.
Doing more things like that. So let's back to what we were saying about communication.
That was just an example of why you were like, she's never off.
She's never off. She's never off. Let me put it that way. I don't want to say anything, but she's never off. She gets hit up at all ends of the night, whether it's night or in the morning. Somebody is in need of her. So
that's why the communication is so necessary. Because for me, I'm like, just tell me what you want, babe. Because everybody else is telling me bits and pieces, and I have to somehow figure it out. Right? I have to try to figure out what's wrong with the kids, because now the kids are like, well, I'm hungry. And I'm like, okay, well, okay. And it's in my tone. If I'm like, okay, well, what do you want to eat? And they're like, forget it. Never mind. I won't eat.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, just tell me what you want.
Yeah. That's super
tell me, for the love of God, what do you want? And then the same, but my grandma she can't handle it, because she can't use her words as effectively as she used to. And then, so with Sean, I'm hard on him, because I'm like, no, you're grown. You don't have dementia. You need to tell me what you want. Yeah. And it's not going to hurt my feelings. You're a man. I want you to live your best life in whatever context that is. I want you to be able to tell me, this is your desire. This is how you like it, because it's not fair. I don't want him to not be able to be his authentic self because he wants to appease me when he doesn't even know what I don't even know what appeases me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a key thing. Is that right there? Is like, you like, okay, I don't even know what appeases me. So what makes you think that, like, my focus is like, okay, I just want to do this, this. I don't even know what appeases me, to be honest. So when you ask me, like, how are you feeling? I don't know how I'm feeling. I don't know, I guess. Like, what do you want? Nothing, I guess. I'm cool.
And, and I can hear, like, it's not that deep for me. I'm like, oh, all right.
Yeah.
Okay, then let me take a step back. Because we've done that before where I'm like, maybe this is not that serious. And you're like, it's really not. I'm like, oh my God, you're right. It's not.
But then again, that goes back to me communicating. And like I said, I have to take responsibility for that, and I have to communicate, and I have to do it in a way. It is a dance. Let me put it that way. Mm-hmm. It is a dance, and somebody can lead and somebody has to follow. But in that dance, you need to be confident with the person that you're with. You need to be comfortable with the person that you're with. And you also need to be in tune with yourself, that you can have these conversations.
Safe.
And it can be safe. But then sometimes you have to understand that these conversations it could be intense. It could be. And it's not like you're trying to hurt the person or you feel a certain kind of way, but you need to be able to express yourself in such a way that's saying, okay, this is how I feel. This is how I feel about this subject matter. And this is what I need to do in that manner. And I have to understand there's sometimes I'm going to say something that could hurt her feelings. And it may not be intentional, but I have to be able to say something and I have to be able to communicate with her in that way and not try to gloss over things or make it sound nice or make it do anything like that. Because, Erika feels like, well, you're not being authentic. Now you're just saying stuff that you think I want to hear. And so I have to be comfortable within myself. Let me say that. I'm going to say that again. I have to be comfortable within myself that I can have a conversation with my wife and be okay with whichever direction it goes, and not try to be like, okay, well, let me say this so she won't be mad. You can't control that. So don't even try to do that. So just express yourself. You get her response. You guys can agree. You can agree to disagree, and you figure it out together. But don't not say anything because for the betterment of like, okay, I just want her to do this. Because
it's avoidance, right?
It is a form of avoidance because now I'm not saying how I truly feel. I'm just saying it so that, you don't get upset or you don't get mad. And it's like, well, that's not helpful.
Me too, right? Yeah. I have to be in that space where I can't be offended by what you say. I mean, there's times where Sean's like, hold on, are you really like taking this to the, like you're getting really upset about this? Like, be a man about it. I thought you were a thug,
Yeah.
Like, you're like,
well, that hurt my feelings, regardless if I'm a thug or not. Still have feelings.
But it makes me laugh. Like I start laughing and I'm like, no, he's right. Okay, let me think about it. Because there's times that he has to tell me, Erika, there's nothing you can do to make this person happy. You will forever frustrate her. Yeah. Forever. She just is a frustrated person. She's not happy. This is the world that she lives in. And that's really like what I realize. It's this story, right? This narrative we tell ourselves. Oh, this person's mad. This person's not listening. This person's doing this to me. They're doing this. And now we become the victim in this story, or we become the offender and we have to defend ourselves. And now it's like we created this scenario that didn't exist. Yeah. And there's so much miscommunication and so much unnecessary argument for nothing. Yeah. And because I know that I can become petty real quick, because if I give you chances and I give you chances and I give you chances in my head, right? And I'm working on it. Okay. I'm getting help. But if I'm playing this in my head where I'm like, I'm giving you opportunities and opportunities and opportunities. Let's work together. Let's work together. No, I'm not mad. No this, no that. Come on, let's fix this. And you're still denying it. All right. Then the menace is loose. I will be petty. But I try not to do that with you, babe, because I love you.
I know you do. But that goes back to our communication, right? It goes back to...
Yeah, but because for me, I'm like, then there's no commitment to you anymore. All right, fuck it. Here we go. Yeah. Game on.
Yeah. I get it. I mean...
But I don't do it to you, baby.
No. That part I understand.
We have to be careful with. I think that's a human...
Yes. A lot of times you just go to your default. Right. You go to your default. My default is I shut down. I'm like, okay, shut down. And so now... Erika's committed to, this conversation and committed to us. And because I'm like, okay, well, I don't like the way you said it, or I don't like how it was delivered. And that's another thing I would say. It's a hard thing to to deal with, and I have to recognize it myself. Delivery is everything. Like how a person says it and in the tone that they say it and whatnot. And it could be something as simple as, hey, did you, put the milk in the refrigerator? And if it ain't said a certain kind of way, in your mind, like, why she got attitude? Like, you know what I mean? Like and then in your mind, you thinking like, oh, maybe it's because of this and that. And you start to create the scenario in your head. You have to be comfortable enough to have that conversation. And you have to be comfortable enough to be like, look, man, it's not even that deep. And even if she did have, an attitude, maybe the next question is like, hey, babe, are you good? Is everything okay? Not necessarily okay with the fact that you told me to get the milk, but maybe you're frustrated about something that happened earlier today or something that happened. And then you could be able to communicate that. And then you don't create a scenario in your head. It's like, oh man, this person is doing this, because you will create a whole dialogue.
We create stories. Our brain is naturally in tune to create a story, right? That's what our brain does.
And so you're filling in the gaps with all that stuff. So when they say hi, you're like, what do you mean by hi?
Yeah.
You're ready to go. So I think it's all of that. So it's, I would say, at least for me, I would say every relationship is different. You guys have to figure out what that form of communication is, figure out what works the best for you, but communicate. But but make a conscious effort to communicate. It is a myth if you think that, if you guys are meant to be, then everything should be smooth. That is not true. Do not subscribe to that. You're setting yourself up for failure. Anything that you are committed to is going to take time, effort, and work. And because I am committed to my wife and I am committed to this relationship, I am committed to everything that comes with it. And I have to acknowledge that there are things that I need to improve on to improve the communication in my relationship. And I can own that. And I'm sure that Erika has things that she feels like she needs to improve on
100%.
Overall that can make it a better situation. So you have to acknowledge that. And you have to understand that you have two imperfect people coming together trying to figure this out. And so you have to put in the work to do it.
And I had to take note that you came from strong women where sometimes you did feel like communication was just being steamrolled at that, right? And I had to take that into account, that was your experience with communication. That still, even though you would share how you felt, it was told to you that you were dumb for feeling that way. That was wrong. That was this. Be a man, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm still very cautious in the words that I say because I'm really silly and goofy and I say things and there's no ill intent, but it can be offensive to him. And that's who I don't want to offend, him or my kids. I should think like that with the public, but I typically don't. But I mean, I think that's an important piece to it, right? That we're not trying to offend each other. We're not trying to prove who's right or wrong. We're trying to just like level the playing field, right? So that we make sure that if every time we do a play, that the play is going to complete, right? It's going to be a completed play.
Yeah.
Did you like that?
That sounded nice.
I brought that up. I made that up in my head.
It's amazing.
Boom, boom, boom. That was fast, right?
Good job.
You're welcome. You're welcome, everyone. And then if you don't have help, I would always suggest, or you're finding it difficult to communicate with your partner, I would say find help. I'd say find a mediator, someone that can, I wouldn't say family member or friend because they're always going to be biased. It's just human nature. I don't care what anybody says. You're biased. You're going to always defend the person you believe, or you're going to find a right person or a wrong person in the subject. And it's not necessarily how it can be effective in mediating a situation. So I would find a trusted, licensed person who can help in communication, and hopefully that will help.
Yeah. Put in the work. It's worth it.
It's work. That's it, babe. Yes.
Put in the work.
Put in the work.
It's worth it.
I'm Mira. We're in sync.
Telekinesis.
Blanchards.
Yeah.
Thank you for another episode of Family Unlock. I love you.
That's all
right. Thank you guys. And always reach out, like, subscribe, and just let us know if there's any topics you'd like us to discuss. We love you guys. Thank you so much for continuing to listen to our podcast. And we hope that we're bringing healing and help to you guys. And if you have any questions, if you need any support, reach out. We're here. And have a good day. Bye.